Ian Ewell, the President of the Geelong Interchurch Social Justice Network, and our group is also committed to taking action on climate change. We view this as an urgent social justice issue, but I must say I find this challenge quite confronting and overwhelming. I know I must do something as a matter of urgency, but what? And I know that collective action will be more effective than individual action. But what? What collective action? This leaves us with the key question tonight, which the panel members will address. Individually and collectively, what can we do? That's our focus for tonight.
I welcome you all in a tradition that has been passed down to me through my family, my mob, the Rotherham people. I would like to pay my respects to elders both past and present, and to all my family and community members, and to acknowledge all non-Aboriginal people that are gathering here today. Rotherham is part of the Kulin Nation, which starts at the Werribee River to Colac, this side of Colac, and from the other side of Ballarat to the other side of the waterways. I would like to thank our Creator Bunjil, who watches over our land. I would like to thank the Creator Bunjil who watches over the land on which we stand. I would like to thank the Creator who watches over the land on which we are visitors. I am proud to follow in the footsteps of my ancestry who have gone before me. This is Rotherham land. Let us talk together, let us bring peace, black and white together. Kimbani Bani Wadarong, Kimbani Nich, Kinjimbani Wadanich, Wadanich. Welcome to Rotherham country. Let us walk and talk together. Gobata, take care.
One of the things we've all fascinated by is their weather patterns and what is it that drives their weather patterns. And this particular image is looking over Antarctica, the southern hemisphere, and you can see all of these amazing things that drive our weather variability. We've got the El Nino Southern Oscillation in the Pacific, a huge influencer of Australia's climate. The Indian Ocean Dipole, which is a really important driver of wetter and drier seasons for Victoria. And you can see around the Southern Ocean this whirlwind, the roaring 40s, the southern annular mode, these amazing winds which drive all of these cold fronts which flick their tails across southern Australia. And it's really interesting that in the mid-90s, a lot of farmers would say that once you saw a cold front off Perth, you knew 3 days later we'd be getting rain in Victoria. And now if I ask them now, if you see a cold front off Perth, what will you think? And they all say, it'll probably slip south. These strong winds in the Southern Ocean are now closer to the poles. They've changed the ocean current that's there. With the east coast currents coming down further, one of the fastest warming areas of ocean on the planet is all there. So it's fascinating to talk to the climate scientists and then share that with our farmers. We know in the last 15 years that the seasonality of rainfall in Australia has changed. The summer rainfall zone that we've had in the last 100 years, in the last 15 years, that zone has shifted south. The uniform rainfall zones have shifted south. And the simple part of the planet is as the world gets warmer, the tropics expands and it pushes everything towards the poles. And that happens in both hemispheres. And this is what's happened with 1 degree warmer. But the impacts of climate aren't just about the weather. There are other areas about that really have big impacts and on all people. It's often the policy responses, so how there are changes to policy such as water, and you look at issues like the Murray-Darling Basin, energy reform, carbon or emissions trading, renewables, bushfires, planning and coastal planning, drought support, health, transport, all of those things, there are real impacts that come with that. And I know a lot of people saying, well, I'm not sure where to start, this issue is so big. And this is a really simple little thing that we've used before about, well, there's a circle of concern about all these things that are happening in this climate change discussion. The circle of influence and things that you don't really have control of. But It is an amazing moment when you start doing just small, simple things yourself. You take control of those things you have control over, and it actually, you feel empowered, and from there you can actually start to do more and cooperate with others and have greater influence. So it's a beautiful thing to start with what you have under your control.
I run a not-for-profit organisation called The Big Fix, and our mission is to change the story to grow a collaborative, solutions-focused culture. So we look at arts, media and community development. In the 60s, when I was a teenager, or young girl, we got the story of plastic. We got convinced that we needed plastic. There was an ad. What did we do before Glad came along? And everybody said, here, we're going to have water in plastic bottles. And we all laughed and said, no one's going to buy water in plastic bottles. But they told us enough convincing stories that everyone, the whole of society, in the space of a few years, took on plastic. So the power of storytelling. In 2009, the failed Copenhagen climate talks had everyone asking for system change, not climate change. I was the climate adaptation officer. The insurance companies were telling councils what to do and saying, if you don't act on climate change, we won't insure you. But the media was telling everybody that government didn't believe in climate change. So the media was getting in the way of the truth and what was really going on at government level. The bulk of the world's people are trying to do the right thing. We have hundreds and thousands of underemployed storytellers, and it's a no-brainer to get the people doing the hard work together with the storytellers. So we've created a huge global following for solution stories. Paul Hawkins says, saying you want to fight climate change is saying like that you want to fight oceans, sunshine or the wind. That's dualism on steroids. We can get away from the language of fighting and start to work together to fix this problem.
It's not enough to sit still at some imaginary future point. We're actually in the danger zone right now. So the commitments we've made to Paris will end up with a 3 or 4 degree temperature rise, which is disastrous for humanity, and even a 1.5 degree temperature rise means we lose the Great Barrier Reef. Most of our ecosystems will suffer, simplify and perhaps collapse, and the Pacific Islands drown. Faced with this diabolical problem, what have we done? So one of the things I've done is set up something called Beyond Zero Emissions in the past, and back in 2013 we said, why not focus on local governments? Local governments, there's about 557 of them or something like that in Australia. So we focused on local government, and after years of campaigning, we managed to convince local council Darebin up in Melbourne to acknowledge that we're in a climate emergency and take climate emergency action. And then we got acknowledgement that we're in a climate emergency from Darebin Council, then we got a climate emergency plan, then we got a climate emergency advisory committee to council, then we got $250,000, a staff member, etc., and a conference which we held a few weeks ago. So we started to move forward, and somewhere in that time the Americans said, okay, this is a thing, and they've taken up the model, and they've got about 6 counties or cities to come on board, including Los Angeles City. A council obviously can't do it by itself, but it has quite a number of levers in its standard roads, rates and rubbish. Roads, you can lot of levers around transport, zero emission transport. Rates, Darebin has adopted borrowed $20 million and is using that to fund back through rates people's install of solar on their homes. And rubbish, we can take all of our green waste and turn it into biochar, stable carbon for hundreds or thousands of years that supports agriculture, gardening or parks and gardens, wherever you want to put it. So there's heaps of stuff we can do. And why emergency? Well, it is an emergency. And in emergencies, Australians get together, work as a team, solve the problem and look after each other. Can we afford to not do this at emergency mode? It's business as usual, incremental change, issue by issue? No. It has to be systemic. It has to be fast. Can we do it? Yes. And get involved.
So in 2013, I went along to a climate rally. It's the first thing like that I've ever been to. And I heard Tim Flannery speak, a very well-known climate scientist. And there was something that he said that has stuck with me since then. And it was that we were the people that were there at that rally. We were the ones that were going to do something about climate. And it really dawned on me that, wow, if I'm not going to take action, then who is? And this is such an important problem that we need to confront. It's too important to leave to other people. So we each really need to take action. And so I started doing that. But at the start, I didn't know what to do. I actually became quite depressed for a period of about 6 months or so after that rally, and I didn't know how I could actually begin. Without knowing it, I'd actually started with food, and so buying local food, growing your own food, reducing our meat intake, and trying to buy organic. So that's one very simple action. The first action you can take is engage in local food and support a local farmer. I then went along to a meeting of the Geelong Sustainability Group. Being around like-minded people and engaging with, whether it's a community group that you would like to become part of, one you want to start your own, or start an action group in your church, is a really fantastic action we can all take. The other area which really I think is an area that's so important is using your money to create the future that you want to see. And every day when we take out our wallet and we go to pay for something, that is a vote. And it's a vote for what we want to create. So taking a look at where our money was and what that was actually doing. And there's a movement around called divestment. So we divested our funds and we shifted our bank accounts, changed our super to a superannuation fund that funds renewable energy projects rather than big polluting projects. But the point I want to make is that we can do all these small personal actions, but it doesn't mean anything unless we don't voice our opinion. And really telling your friends and family, getting politically active, and so really voicing that opinion, using your sphere of influence. And it's amazing when you take these actions, then you talk to people, how quickly that catches on, and all of a sudden they're asking you questions about how we can do it too. Make sure you write to politicians, vote for a candidate that supports clean energy, and just remember, if not us, then who? And if not now, then when?
It's a little bit about where do we put the responsibility for this mess we're in. Do we blame the politicians, or is the fingers pointing back at ourselves? That keeps going back and forth. Or is it the media? And so on. We go in these triangles and try to find who's responsible for this. And if you think about it, the simplicity of it is really that back in 1988, 89, also here in Australia, the world was first of all, a bit shocked about the news about what all this fossil fuels was going to do and the future would look like and so on. And the governments, including the Republican president of America, were all in agreement, we need to do something. The world was going to reduce its emissions by 20% by such and such year and so on. This was very clear back in 1988. So if the politicians by then had said, we're going to put a little bit of tax on the fossil fuels and then we'll increase it gradually, you know what would have happened? We would have followed. We would have used less and less of it. We would have been inclined to move over to renewable energy, etc., etc. Simple. So why didn't they do it? Is that actually our responsibility that they didn't do it? Because we weren't really alert. We weren't pushing. We weren't saying, hey, folks, this is actually important. What are you doing? We can't expect, and this is a classic thing about politicians, we think they're the leaders, they'll fix it for us or something. We can't expect that to happen. The truth is that the leaders are followers. They do what they feel their voters, their constituents and so on are telling them. It's you, the people, who will push the politicians. It's not the politicians who will do it for you. One very courageous 15-year-old girl from Sweden did that about a month ago. She made a little sign, and then she sat in front of the Swedish parliament and said, I am going on school strike. Why? Because I want you politicians to talk about the climate crisis as if it is a crisis. Why that? Because if you did that, then everything else would follow naturally. She speaks with such clarity and simplicity.
We kids don't usually do what you tell us to do. We do what you do. And because you adults don't give a damn about my future, I won't either.
Saw the photo in the beginning where she's just sitting there with her school bag, her water bottle, and the sign, all alone. 3 weeks later, on that same square, she was together with 1,000 other Swedes, most of them school kids. So she runs something now that she calls Fridays for Future. And it's catching on around in various cities. And you may ask then, but of this young girl, and this statement, that if you don't care, if you adults don't care about my future, why should I?
Well, I'm the next generation, and I have grown up in a world of new risks, new challenges, and everything flies at me a million miles an hour through the news notifications on my phone. It's so overwhelming. What does climate change really look like to me? And what does my future look like is the primary reason that I'm here. What does my future look like, and how do I want to be a part of that? And I hear everything about how everything's going to change and how it's all going to be so different. But what am I going to do to change it? And to that I say, well, one day I wanted to be a pilot. The other day I wanted to work with the diplomatic corps. Why not I become a politician? Why not I stand up in front of more people like you? But this is a local level. Maybe I should just work my way up and continue to change and influence others. It's events like this and hearing the fantastic words of all these experts that make me think, thank you for your work and all that you have done. I would really honestly like to continue that on all levels that I can. And I want to be here to represent other young people and say that we want to move forward and we really want to do something in this crisis. And all these people have practical solutions that they have thought up over time, and I really encourage you to listen to that and take that home. I don't want to be standing in front of here when I'm a lot older, in front of the next generation of children, and have to say sorry once again. And we keep getting told that we're not a generation of doers. We just sit on our phones and we just do nothing. I want to be the part of the next generation of doers that really fix problems.
I'm working towards supporting only people and companies that I agree entirely with the ethics of their practices. So that includes what I buy. I'm looking towards going completely zero waste. And what media I consume, I get a lot of my information from people who make sure they distinguish the difference between their opinions and the facts. It's so easy not to care about waste, about using disposable products that are cheap and bad quality. Every time we buy a 6-pack of mango yogurt tubs, for example, we are essentially voting for the company to make more packs of yogurt. By realising that everything I consume I am also voting for has encouraged me to be far more conscious of my choices so that I am voting for things I support ethically.
Ian asked me to make a very small statement about a booklet that is called Laudato Si group booklet. With the writing of Laudato Si, Francis decided to really connect with a lot of people across the world, scientists as well as people who had some idea about the length of the universe story. So from 13.8 billion years ago, when the Big Bang occurred, we have had this long story. And Margaret Mead once said, and you've heard this quote many times, never underestimate the power of a few to bring about change. It's the only way that change happens.